as the world shifts back and becomes more inhabitable, then these new projects need to get underway. This has already happened, I saw in the future. It just needs to happen again. It's really obvious. You take these lowlands, um, and you can, there's always these cracks in the earth. The earth is always shifting. At the North Pole, in the deserts, anywhere. There's always rumblings, and people have gotten so used to the feeling of the earth shifting. It's like part of their shivering of their molecules. They do not notice it. And yet it's been proven it's happening. Everything's shifting all the time. And false modern science is lying to everybody straight up, as they now admit, especially Idaho. Underground Idaho shifts massively each year. Incredible amounts of twisting, cavorting, sliding, and channeling. There's infinite underground water in Idaho. A lot of it is hot through to Wyoming, of course. So that could be used for energy and greenhouses in Idaho because it's terrible weather here. Most of Idaho, all of Idaho, has terrible weather. Some years it's good, usually it's bad. So you need greenhouses in the future because Idaho is one of those places that could be the greatest place to live if it was managed by, you know, people other than zombie, Republicans. So this actually is a really easy setup from the ocean, and it allows you to bring ships through and water for desalinization. Now, there's been tons of strides in successfully desalinating water and just taking the minerals and then you do whatever with them for industry. Like I was talking about, you take the minerals and you combine them with minerals from the sand of the deserts and you create these light tubes. Because, I've discussed this before, but there's a couple of things I didn't discuss about it. So if we go over here and you go to Egypt, so what they did, because Egypt isn't just here, Egypt is an extension of like pre-Persia. So West Egypt and the West Nile will reappear over here as the weather improves and the earth shifts back to realistic living conditions. But what I was going to say is, I discussed before how you could take the sand and you could create, the tunnel of heat, of light from a bunch of reflective solar panels that are sucking half the energy because you can't get over 50% efficiency, like I said. And then the other half of the energy is ionized through the clear surface and then sent as a laser through a simple angled light tunnel that shoots through the air, hits the main light tunnel, then with a port. So you'd have all of these solar panels, just like they've done, shooting instead of at a tower, instead down it along a tunnel. And this can be used with the various energy sources like my lightning windmill towers of the future, light mills, that's what I'm calling them, of course. Now, discussing ancient Egyptian technology, I got into this a little bit like 6 years ago with Grant. Um, what they would do is they would have these, like I said, these heating huts. And um, let me get the right piece of paper here. Hydro-obsidian, moissanite. Okay, so there's certain materials that are available from desert sand, and these materials separate from the light tunnel. You then have these like like I described before, like nighttime, like little huts that are attached along the heat pipe of sunlight. And they soak up the energy from the sun into their natural crystal and heat up through the day. And then you're able to extract electrons from that with a negative magnetic energy field with like a ring structure that spins loose the energy back into electricity, or I guess technically there's a way to turn it back into light and send it through the tunnel still to the sea, but I can't quite focus on how you do that right now. So the point is, here's what Egyptians did. They had energy for some people that was part of a grid with wires, but that's a nuisance. So I discussed this with a ton of people, and this is just what was done. Everybody agrees. Energy was shot down to the coast. Then they had these like desalinating temples, I don't know what you'd call them, the right on the shoreline. And the energy, there's all of these pillars that are like magnetic. And then the heat of the energy coming through starts the spin on a centrifugal, like a centrifuge. Um, so there's like all of these pillars in a big round, all sticking up like spikes that are magnetic. And then in between them, in rows that get smaller and bigger, I mean, it wouldn't fill a whole area. This would be like here or whatever. So then, how do I explain this? These different loop levels, as the light goes through them, the light branches out and splits all different directions inside of this complex. And then you have simple capture points for bleeding it into electrons at each point going to the center, and then, going underneath the whole structure as wires out into the city in all directions. Now, this spinning magnetic rings with the spikes, they'd have the spikes with certain radio frequency outputs for magnetic energy. Then these rings and the rotation that they're spinning at, it creates like a casting of sound magnetic electrons out around into the city. And then, as I've explained before, everybody avoids this technology because they don't want to be free like ancient Egypt. They want to control everyone. So, people have at their homes at different distances receiving. There's two ways that it's done. There was active receivers where they're like miniature versions of what's happening here, but they're spinning with less coils, and it's like a small device that like powers your home. Like it was like the size originally of like a refrigerator, and then they refined it down even without advanced manufacturing of today, down to like the size of a radio or something. Now all of that I've described how as well Egypt and France and extension into the modern era and other places have continued Egypt's electric surface lines, you know, for city streets to run people around on them. All of that is hated by the modern system. And everybody who, it's interesting, who wants to embrace the past, isn't that interesting? Everybody knows there's hard science, hard tech from the ancient past, and that All of that was avoided, and they said, how can we do something else, something different? What can we study through all of history from other places other than Egypt? How can we develop worse, lamer, cost prohibitive technology and keep everyone slaves and say that there's not enough for the world? How could we be as enslaved, poor, bored, and beaten on now as 500 years ago, as 1,000 years ago? That they found a way to increase the tech and increase the slavery. Amazing. So, I'm not even done. I think it's interesting because my chiropractor, I was talking to him about how I was going to put these videos on YouTube before I'd put any up a couple months ago. And he, cycling from the future, said, oh, you're going to talk about your Egyptian energy thing. And I was like, I am. I haven't done it yet, but he thought I had. And today I now am. So when I talked to him 2 months ago, he was now in the future. Interesting, isn't it? So I discussed the Baghdad Canal, how useful it is for shipping resources and oil, because people still love using that. Now let's look at Moldova. Right here, you could technically run all the way a saltwater canal next to the river, all the way up to here. Mohiliv Podilsky. When I was a kid, I practiced with other children pronunciating every language and getting to become familiar with it. And while I've lost the meaning of the words, at least I can still pronounce other languages sometimes. So there's not much to say. It's just another canal project. And the river winds all over, so you'd have to stick to one side and then go under it in places, I guess. But mostly just stick to one side. Now over here, this has really bothered me. People make up that there's war, but it's just terrorism. As you'll hear on the news soon, that terrorism stopped all advancements like this. There's a simple river connection that's lowlands that stays, 100 feet, 55 feet, all the way through. So, if you come from here, from the Black Sea or whatever they want to call this little piece, which isn't named right now, you can get all the way over here to the Caspian Sea. Now, the interesting thing about the Caspian Sea is people are slowly draining it down in height. It's evaporating and nothing's renewing it. So it's dropped like 100 feet in the last 80 years or something. Now, that's, of course, problematic in various ways. It's an salt ocean that they're turning into a brine concentrate. And you know what the earth does, right? It gets more and more brined and lower, and then it sucks down, and the ground kind of crumbles and falls away and locks tighter underneath the area with all of the stacked sodium and other shit crystals. And then it's way below sea level. And then everybody around it will fight to the death with their last bacteria turd to prevent it from ever returning as a direct inlet to the ocean. You can see it in the Middle East. That's all they think about. All they think about is they can't let their precious ancient blood in the Dead Sea ever mix with the ocean. And they need to take all of that blood from all of those murdered people and they need to give you the sea salt from it right here. They need you to eat ancient murdered armies of people. They need it. They need you to be part of their evil. So the second the world fixes will be the second that this is a channel and you're actually running seawater back in here at a steady rate, desalinizing it, and actually maintaining some health to this area in here from natural ocean current bacteria that evolves around the world. So everybody here is so unevolved, so snaggletooth, so degenerate that have been here for a long time that are causing this. It's all they think about, right? It's not the Gaza Strip. It's just the few fucking freaks that have just look terrible, are terrible, and refuse to let anything update until you kill them because they're terrorists. It's the same here in the US. So Egypt built a second canal piece through here so ships can't get stuck as easy. And it was directly funded by the people's bank accounts of the country to keep ships moving. Because eventually Egypt has to build up its economy in other ways because they'll be shipping, like they say, coming up through here and splitting off through the Gaza Strip because this will become a route through here and through to here. They have it all mapped out for hundreds of years. It's going to happen now. So finally, Israel will be forgotten about. Who cares? If you're a religious dolt, then you'll really give a crap, but it's just another location that's a desert. Now I was going to come in here because they're announcing that they're going to put in a second canal through here to avoid Istanbul, go over here or whatever. That makes sense, I guess. You need shipping either direction. So in response to that, I was thinking there's this choke point here where they built this bridge, reasonably recently that lets ships underneath because it's tall. So someday, I just want to discuss it when everything is more industry with people evenly scattered across the planet doing stuff. You'll want to put in another bridge here. Not all three. I just had fun laying it out real quick. Now, China is starting to do this to prevent interference and passage issues with farms and cities. They come in when they build their big bridges, and you find the high point, right? So it's out here. All the cities are doing this in Europe now. The high point is usually close to their figure eight, infinity loop, freeway entrances stuff. Now, it's a little up the hill from it, but it's always placed close so that this area can be adapted and you can go up onto a bridge that would, start at the high point of 200 feet here because everything else around it is lower and then out into here it gets higher. So you need your shipping bridge to be 200 or 300 feet above the level of the water of the ocean for, future ships and how huge they're going to be. Eventually, they'll actually make the ships slightly wider instead of making them taller with like a triple hull design, like 3 strips connected with stuff in between. That's inevitable. I don't know why. We worked out that design and everybody said it should have been employed by big ships, but there's just some canals that were a little narrow. So we worked out these ships with the extra side ballast. So if you have 3 hulls, Hulls, in the water right next to each other. The two side ones can be used for maneuvering left to right with these like pressure outputs through ballast tanks and stuff. And then the center one is for forward momentum push. So you can spin the ship in a circle really easily and have total control. Why has this not been employed? Because they don't want things to be perfect. The ugly, stinky pig farmer cop boy terrorists. They want everyone miserable like them, eating bacon every morning so then they can rape their butts in jail and say it never happened. Okay, so you would come in and you'd put in your pillars and keep it up above the city, for an example, and then for convenience, you'd run the pillars next to or through the river so that the bridge would be above the river. Very convenient that way. And then you'd cross over up to, see, it gets up to 300 feet here, and they already have a nice little parking lot, and somebody put in, their uh, restaurant. But the point is, you can put a nice little circle shape here and where you can, access the town or stay right on the freeway and have it go out along whatever road system, this way or down. Um, this would be a shorter bridge over water. This would be less land use to this point where they have their spin point at 222 feet. And then the final one down here, where you'd have to go quite a ways from the high point at 226 here, but you just go along the coast with, cheap, easy to employ pillars now. And this would be when you use China's big machines that they've come up with where they lay each chunk of bridge over the support pillars of concrete with a big old machine that runs along there and just sets them down, big old pieces. You could get it done in no time along there. So probably if they were going to put in another bridge for shipping in the future and cars, it would be one of these three locations. Maybe this one. I don't know. It was just fun, pointing that out. Now, I noticed this my whole life. They blocked. Greece didn't want shipping. They didn't want an economy. They hated the concept, the people running everything. Oh, total weirdos. And so they finally built this new bridge so the ships can go underneath of it, I think. Should be high enough. And then this one's still here. Old bridge. Now you'd think surely they aren't actually blocking all shipping, right? Surely not. Surely this bridge, it sinks down into the water or something, but it doesn't. It does not actually do that. It could. Nope. So that's going to have to be removed and put in higher or go down low for ships to pass all the time. But then there's so many people and cars between the two pieces of the city going back and forth that you just basically have to make it up higher. But that's difficult because it's all low in here, right? It would be expensive. You have to come up over here beyond the houses at the high point, and then over here you don't really have a high point. It'd be a big pain, wouldn't it? So is there a solution? What do you do? How do you fix that? Um, Here's how you fix it. It's cheaper than going up. If everything's down at the low level, then you go down. You build a walkway and roadway down, whatever, 50, 100 feet down underneath the shipping. If you can't go up, you go down. And then people in cars can drive right back and forth and then up onto the surface, however that would work. Um, you might have to take advantage of a little bit of the strip, like you'd come in from here and go down underneath. Um, so as well as this interesting fact that Greece, it has this land that's lowlands that needs to be elevated canal for shipping, and then you drop it down, wherever to ocean level. It's a little too high for turning it into a canal straight from the ocean because it climbs up to 300 or 400 feet or whatever at certain spots briefly. So you'd really have to channel down too far. But it stays even enough through here, 200 to 300 feet, that you could create a nice working canal system for small boats, big ships, whatever. And you could fully utilize your main breadbasket farm valley of Greece here and have it go all like how I show here. This took a little bit of effort, and I'm not being paid for this. So I expect to be paid in friends and, resources if I can't be handed money for all of this. Back in Elko, in a loop from 2000 to 2030, I was sort of paid with high quality food and technology and friendship and stuff then. It's like I'm just not connected to the world that humans are living in and their false radiation levels. I'm like in the real world moving along, and everybody else is fading in and out. Now, what's ridiculous about that is there's been an effort. Like, I had gold coins from Elko. They vanished. I couldn't bring them up here to Idaho. I had them. I took pictures and videos of them. No, I wasn't allowed to have my gold investment go with me into the future through these years. I have to wait as humanity certifies that I've reached 2030. Then my gold coins will reappear. Someone will say, oh, here's your gold coins back. How's that for permanent investment? The whole thing is so absurd. Everything that we had in Elko, the greenhouses, the trailers, it all had to stay there and vanish away for 30 years. How is that fair? And if you have a whole system based on merit and what someone's achieved, you can't take that away from them because from your corrupt point of view, they haven't reached when they've done it yet. I should have an automatic bank account with always renewing money. I'm always working. I'm always advancing technology. All of the goddamn stupid scientists that interact with humanity to bring, explanations of what science is down to 100 IQ brains, they all agree with me. I make declarations based off of facts that were discovered in 2030. Me and these homeschool kids using the resources that have been built up through time. New discoveries, then and now. And now as I go through these final years to catch up to then, everything twists and hyperloops so that it all happened now early by a few years and not in 2030. And I still haven't been paid as everybody begins all of these advancements and plans off of everything I've discussed. It's absurd. And it really comes down to a Republican, fascist, ultra control so that you have to be their friends and rape their right butts or you ain't ever getting money. And so the Mexican culture of, true Christianity, saints worship and God worship, the Republicans ain't Christian. So they target all of the Middle Americans for death, enslavement, and torture. They've always done it. And then they put out these stories about how dangerous Mexicans are, and they need to, have ice everywhere to freeze and kill them. Like, as things inevitably get better, the terrorists squawk louder on the news. And eventually, it'll get to the point where the bacteria running everybody with their shitty uranium signals will just cut off. And then somebody will say, hey, wait a minute. That news person has been talking about supporting terrorism for decades. And then they take a baseball bat and they smash it over their head between the eyes of the news person. And then they die instantly. And then the person, walking down the street next to him says, oh, that was that newscaster. And then the brain updates with the new radio signals from the new bacteria that's running things. And then they say, oh, he was just a terrorist. And then they walk off. That's humanity. You have no souls. You aren't in control of your decisions. It's just a mass hypnosis with rotted bacteria running everything and them feeding it at the hospitals, feeding them your bodies, breaking down your bodies into cancer and emptiness for the bacteria to fill up and control. That's why I've convinced people they should stop eating sugar, white sugar. It scatters the light across your brain evenly and hides the fact that you're decaying into a zombie. So you can have false, repetitive thoughts and never have a new thought once you become an adult. Adults don't have new thoughts. They're stuck. Their brains are locked. Their skulls aren't growing anymore. Now compare that to me. I have the genetics. My last name was Richardson. I'm a hobbit. They do exist. My feet change size. My feet have thick treading on them. My feet are hairy. My feet are now size 16, going back up to size 17 by next year. I'm only 6 foot tall. I'm a hobbit. It's just that hobbits mixed with other peoples, just like in Middle America, there's 3 foot tall people, and they mix with other people and become 5, 6 feet tall eventually. So these genetics in me have basically continuously fluctuated and grown and shrunk around the bacterial cancer pushed by radio waves, hospitals, and cop sirens. They figured out how to create wavelengths to disturb the bacteria inside of people and force them to grow on command and destroy people based off of light patterns off of cop cars. I proved this. And since I discussed this for years, now all the cop cars have gone back to flashing normal, peaceful light patterns back and forth, slowly pulsing at a slow rate that prevents that frenetic, desperate bacterial struggle. Everybody knows what I'm saying is true. They just don't give a fuck because the bacteria won't let them. Here's another obvious bridge, and the loop point on it. Now this one, you might have to go under the water in a certain spot, like I'm saying, here, unless you can make it high enough for boats to go under. I don't know which one's easier at this point. On this side, you got this high land at 240 feet, so you can make your loop and use the streets of this town and go up above it all and not disturb too much. And probably get over here to this island because it's at 50 feet, and just go above the boats. You know what I mean? And then through here, it doesn't have to be as high. It can have dipped down and go at lower, so the smaller boats, 50 feet clearance or whatever. Pretty easy. And it would open up so much land for proper development, as this absurd notion that humans could ever eat this much. Like, I always point this out. Take one section of farming like this, however many acres. You take 1,000,000 acres, however much land is here, and you say, okay, how much acres does it take to feed people certain crops? You know, fruits, vegetables, ground roots, nuts, whatever other groups there are, grains. Okay. Here's the first thing. If you eat all those other categories other than grains, then you don't need to eat as much grain and you grow bigger and stronger because you have a balanced diet. So, one area like this, like I always say, produces enough food if you turned it all into carefully planned tree farms and everything to feed, if the people don't eat meat, the whole of Greece, a tiny area, no matter how many people were there. And so all of this farming is lazy, like missing teeth farmers who are full of bacteria who continue the status quo. They put out their fields that are not grazing land because they don't want to be shepherds. The whole world has made up a false economy. Everybody would still be shepherds, right? But no, the animals have to be tortured in tiny pens, and then all of that land has to be used to do what? Grow corn and grain, which is then shipped with stinky CO2 burning fuel over to the animals wherever they are to feed them, instead of letting them wander around also through the winter. There are fodder plants and trees that have feed for animals in the winter. This is a known factor. You can do all of these things to make it so that you could be modern shepherds. You can have automated field gates, and all the sheep and cows, the amount you need for milk and shearing and everything, would wander around between the fields, and there hardly anybody would have to, deal with it, except for, actual monitoring the milking and the shaving and everything. But no, you're all cannibal bacteria scum, and the bacteria says it controls all human bodies. And then it says, well, the earth is sort of alive and it needs to control it like a human body. So it needs people that are everywhere scattered across these farms to torture the animals, to prevent the animals from evolving. You got to give them vaccines so they don't escape from the bacteria. Because if the animals evolve, then some human will interact with an animal that's evolved and have new bacteria that's immune to all of their control schemes. So hence, they're obsessed with immunizing all animals too and getting to them. Because they can't let that evolution happen. They can't let people evolve into simply using stem cells from animals like they used to survive. It's a forced evolution to eat red meat. And you're a bacterial-like corruption for doing so all the time. And you can see it from what happened to the world. It is caused by this Republican meat-eating infection. All of these are basically useless fields. It'll never go to human stomachs. It'll go to animals that are super sick, and then all that will go into the humans, a concentrated energy going not to the human's body for growth, but to the bacteria in their bowels. So then the bacteria can receive signals as to whether each individual is allowed to grow or think. Total control scheme mechanism. And you can't exactly fully deny what I'm saying because the simple facts are there. A field of grain can feed a whole village. And yet there's thousands of fields around this village. So what the fuck are they doing with all of that land? They're wasting it. They're wasting it. And the truth is, cows, for example, they try to mass produce cows to be as generic as possible. Holstein, and all the other names they have. The ones for specifically for meat, but they've done it to milk too. They've tried to mass inseminate with certain male cows with lame characteristics and create a super incest species of bovine that they can then feed to everybody. And so then the genetics are similar. And then the bacteria can plug into that and then rot the humans more efficiently. Isn't it wonderful? And the whole time I'm talking about this, all the scientists, like they're controlled, say exactly what I'm saying, but they go, "Oh, isn't it wonderful?" As if it's a religion to be eaten by bacteria in your guts. Um, so when people say there's too much humanity on the planet, I've noticed they actually say it and then walk away quickly or run because the bacteria in them is going on a war, civil war, because there's always some mixed opinions of bacteria in everyone's bodies, no matter how much they try to get rid of all of it. And when it's around me, it receives new radio signals. And the bacteria that believes that there's a hope for life in the future says, fuck the Republican system. And then the person gets all confused and runs off and cries a lot. You know I'm right. You with the uranium, with the land use, this is absurd. Then there's the fact that you've crumpled and squeezed the earth so much that look at how all these fields are squashed. And as the earth compresses, they all shift and get crooked and retarded. That's just how smashed the earth is, all twisted in pieces into spots. And they put roads in to match. Now, what I will truly never understand is the ongoing updating of it's like a live signal of all materials that make up the planet and the shape they're in and the location of roads. It shifts dynamically, everything straightens out, and yet everybody acts like they don't notice because their very bodies, the very cells of their body, are twisted and deformed by bacteria to, at the atomic level, to rotate incorrectly in patterns that are misshapen. So that, like they always make the joke, bumpkins that wander around with crooked limbs because they're part of the crooked land that they're farming, part of the chemicals they're using to destroy everything and twist it further. So, here in the modern era, there's people that are evolving out from under that twisted system that are beautiful, like me. And as we shift the bacterial influence, as everybody tries to murder us off with their Republican cop ICE forces, we survive somehow. We get together, we grow stronger physically. The radio signals from our bacteria start convincing other zombie populace that our way is the highway, and things start to change. Here's another location up here in Greece, I guess, where you could put in another shipping lane. It's only 71 feet to here. Okay, and another one. Up the Struma to this lake. With modern methods, you can create your separate port with ocean water as a part next to the lake, and it runs all the way down the ocean. You can have a, whole system there that doesn't have to become briny. I don't need to discuss that further currently, actually, so I'm going to move on to here. Now, if they're going to build a second channel here, like they're absolutely stating they're starting on now, then it's too narrow here. So you would put in a channel here because it's the lowest point and the narrowest almost. Like right in here, 358, over here, 203. So you wouldn't do it the narrowest point. You do it here. Generally, right up through here. Maybe through that bay or this one. I don't know. Whatever they figure out. Over here. And that would allow ships that are coming from Greece and over in here, I guess, to get through this part. And they would just allow ships to not get all cramped in here and have an alternate route. What else is there to show? I mean, this is some extensive land use, reuse. If you got all of this inhabitable, which it very much should be, what I don't want to see is have it turn into more crooked farms like the rest of this shitty area. And then what? Chemicals, feeding animals, wasting all your time, living a shorter life. I would have all this land go to people that have been wronged by the administration of the Republican bacterial worldwide CIA system of the 1900s. Give all the poorest people that deserve it the most farms here. Make it a straight grid. Give them their waterways. And watch as just one area like this, all these three areas turned into farming, could support all of Europe, all of the Middle East with the amount of food it could produce with the forests and fields. Everybody hates trees. They chop down the trees, have stupid grain fields, and it's just an excuse to put more chemicals out there and eat more meat. You're disgusting. Vile creatures currently, most of humanity. Now I discussed how the land the way it currently is, the Snake River used to come up to the 3 points here and then go up and through here. Now it goes all the way over here, all the way up around, not the Snake River, the Columbia. And at that time, there was so much snow in the mountains up in here and down through here and over that the Columbia River, the earth split wide in a chasm, and the Columbia River had 5 times more water than the Amazon River. 5 times more. All summer long. We were getting 100 feet of snow in the tall mountains all through here. And this was just 15 years ago. And then Republicans came in, they froze the groundwater, installed their bacterial radio signals, and just crushed the Western US back down into their control, into their rapist death machine. And as a result of them doing that, all of this spun in. There's this big twist of mountains now that locks into this area, this cornucopia as they call it. This was never here when I was a kid. Nobody knows what the fuck this is. It just appeared as a new shape of Earth. Now there's what are called, there's glowing honey mushrooms that feed off of, bee energy, because the bees make honey in trees that are hollow out in the wilds. And then the mushrooms grow up with filaments through the trees and take some of the hydrogen peroxide from the honey and run it through their roots to grow. And they've grown and killed off the bacteria that the Republicans pumped into the groundwater all through here. And get this, the Republicans are such zombies and they bet so hard on running the land with bacteria that when the bacteria dies out here, they die. They need a signal off of the land of rot. Just like real humans need a signal of magnetism off of the earth to feel like they can do anything the other direction. It's a big, giant civil war. It's been going on for hundreds of years. And you all are just sitting ducks for the Republicans to experiment on and say it must have been the liberals that did it. Okay. Now this ski resort. Both doesn't exist yet and yet existed 20 years ago. I remember it. I went skiing there, but it's gone again. And my pyramid hexagon teepee yurts, they don't exist again. So I described how they function. And we go over here. What was I gonna? There was a name of a city out here. Where'd that go? Oh, North Powder. Yeah, because people come out here to ski, so that's there because there was more places over in here somewhere. But a nice location is this pyramid slope here. It's a great skiing location. Can be developed real nice. Now what's fascinating is me and Grant were living through time so, how do you put it? Like our mortal coil of our bodies was on high energy spin. So we kept going through time spaces that had already happened. So let me give you an example of what I mean. Grant was able to record on his camera from where we're located here. He was able to see with a 35x zoom, somehow zoom into 70x, 100x, and keep the image clear. He was able to zoom all the way over to one of these side ski areas up here at Bogus Basin, whichever one goes over this direction or wherever it does. And he zoomed in. It was at night. There's lights down the slope for night skiing. He zoomed in all the way till you could clearly see a figure in a blue ski suit expertly wending down the slope. With a snow hat on because it's night and, goggles. Of course, he couldn't get close enough to identify that it was me, but it was me. It's my suit. I remember wearing that blue suit to ski all the time, and then it vanished into the future. So he managed to, from some point in between the two future points, where we sunk into the past in like 2016 to 2022, big sump point where all the murderer Republicans from basically 1920 somehow jumped over to 2020 seamlessly, like the bacteria, like vibrated in their guts, got everybody in the future to see them because they're also vibrating on rot signals, and then said, "You're in the future," because magically people can see that you are. And then those murderous, 7-foot tall, jacked up, hideous, cannibal Republicans beat on me and Grant. But don't worry, then they created, after a year of effort, a false video with little short 5'10" cops later taking up the space where the taller cops were in the original video. They deleted all the original videos, came back in, made their own new videos, made up their own stories year after year after year, waited several years. I go to my jury trial. Half the people in the jury audience leave and say that they were selected so that they were connected to the police that want to kill me. They all got up and left and said, "Nope, okay, we admit it. Mexicans are waiting outside and we'll all be gunned down." So they all left, and then there was the jury. So they let me off on all charges. But then the Republicans just said, "Well, we don't care what the jury says. You're now guilty of not signaling when the murder boy pulled you over who wasn't a cop. He never declared he was a cop. He never got training. He wasn't officially paid. He wasn't on the payroll. He was a interstate task force ICE member before ICE was official, back when they were putting ice in the ground to freeze everything and control everybody." So they made up that I didn't signal, but in the videos, my blinker was still on that was actually shown to the jury, And then they just said, no, you didn't signal. Now we're taking away your driver's license. You don't get to drive around anymore. Ha ha. And then I went to um, a certain location and I was like, so you're going to give me a driver's license? I'm just going to drive around anyway and kill everybody that tries to stop me because the jury said that I disobeyed no traffic laws. And then they just superseded them and tacked on a sixth charge that I didn't signal after 2 years. So then they could take away my license and bully me more and say that they're getting one on me, and that later if I ever get in an accident like I did on Friday the 13th of March this year in a staged accident they set up, then they can get me and throw me in jail and torture me to death again. Like you've seen in the photos, they tortured me to death. There was nothing left. I was a spirit, and I stepped out as a spirit out of jail. They thought I was dead. And then I put flesh back on. I ate real food and became real again. And here I am, and I'm telling you, I'm going to kill every fucking Republican cop in goddamn Caldwell. I'm going to go back there. I'm going to work out. I'm going to weigh 300 fucking pounds. I'm going to be 7 foot tall. And I'm going to walk around Caldwell with a gun and a sledgehammer, drive around. I'm going to kill and torture every fucking cop that I see nonstop. They're going to leave me the fuck alone. Do you understand? So, doing all this with ships to get across to North Dakota, Minnesota, over to this lake is possible. So you could have shipping through the winter along here. You have some locks, and you'd use the infinite resources of water in here for the locks off of these mountains down through here and across. Very doable. I've talked about it before. Now, this is very doable. This, it shifts and becomes less and more possible, but now as I pull my body straight and force the earth to do what I fucking want rather than all you zombies, this is pulling apart again here. So you can go right up through here, through North Pole Lake, bypass Christie Lake here, go through it, along it, and basically the highest point is 200 feet or less. This one's 253. So it is possible. And most of it is way lower, like 50 or 100 feet. It is possible to create a shipping lane through here. Very easy. And then once you've done that, then you bypass going all the way up through the Northwestern Passage. I mean, that keeps you lower down, and shipping lane is easier to break the ice, nonstop through, you'd assume. Now I got up over here, and I said, okay, so there's this village here of Eskimos or whatever, Inuit, and the land split so that you can go right through again and have your shipping and just make small channels through. Very little effort. But, if that one isn't juicy enough, then I went through here too and showed how you could come along and dig it out through here. But here it does get up to 200 feet exactly, before dropping back down. 149, yeah. So anyways, both of these are possible. This one would probably be a lot less effort though. This is far enough away from the North Pole, which has shifted far away from Greenland in my life and is now floating out here. And there's this compressed crack from different chunks of the earth from the enormous pressure of the different continents crushing together up here, along here. So that this pole is actually dithering in like a spin point under the ground and like kind of laser gouging this energy gouging this trench originally out, and then it spins in and crumples in and pushes to a point here and kind of vibrates around. They have this line from this island, Wrangel Island, the anti-meridian, because it's an energy shift point of like spinning islands at the edges of the North Pole Ocean that dictates the flow and shift of the North Pole location. Something else I was going to point out. People will claim these are craters from impacts from giant meteors. What? No, craters are, in the ground lower and have a certain shape. Now, what this is a de-looping of bacterial magnetic energy of the whole world. They basically tried to take all the human bodies and the animals and create bacterial magnetic signals to shape and control the growth of the planet, just like they shape and control the growth of everyone's genetics to prevent anyone from being too much better than the Republican murderers. But yet slowly everyone's evolving anyways, no matter what they do, no matter the radio signals that rot everyone's scalps and everything. There's still 7 foot, 8 foot tall people evolving with big muscles and sexy penises and pussies and titties, despite the Republican rot and rubble of everything. And you can see here, there's a second loop here, another one here. It's like the North Pole is putting out positive and negative energies that spin against each other and untwist the land, physically, forcefully, away from what humanity has created. Over here, you can see it clearly spinning loose. They even put the words in a twist. And here's the second one next to it, negative and positive charge. Ionic spigots out of the earth, oscillating, straightening things. These are all over in the eastern US because they have crushed the fuck out of the eastern US to get whatever the fuck they want while destroying everyone else in the world. Here's another one. And they actually have the balls, some asshole, to say that this is an impact crater. It's up. It goes up and not down. This whole protuberance. And they actually have to, admit it exists. There's a whole river around it. 360. And their roads show that it exists around by the river. What these de-loopings are doing is pulling, basically back 250 years ago, this was developing, these ridge lines from dirty humanity. And now, since the eclipse of 2017, slowly, infinite humans back there, infinite stacked layers of missing false time. Storms come in, kill everybody. New people appear, storms come in, kill everybody. These storms are killing you because everything's compressed. So then the storms compress in and crush you to death. Stop compressing everything. Stop pumping your shit uranium into areas that tighten the earth. You will actually all die of cancer and be replaced by new populace instantly. So who cares? Okay, I've pretty much covered everything I was going to in this video now. There's 40% less ice in the North Pole, so this is doable. And I just want the whole world to have sexy people fucking, getting on planes and boats, flying around, going around, and then fucking some more. That's the future. Sex, sex, sex. Republicans created a false uranium state where everybody's bodies are panicking, all the animals, all the cows, so that they can't have sex all the time. They have to build up a panic-like bacterial impetus to force a baby to happen suddenly. And the baby's super sick because one sperm meets one egg and it's a whole baby. And then you can never support that growth enough because You need a bunch of sperms and a bunch of eggs that all morph together, like how you absorb your twin in the womb. Well, each human should be made up of 1 million ovums and 1 billion sperms. And then all of that builds up the energy so there's no cancer, there's no empty spaces in the genetics. But the Republicans want empty space so everybody's weak and can be enslaved by bacteria they plug into those areas. And they talk about it openly. They brag about it nonstop about their GMO torture devices. And no one likes it, but nobody just kills them off and moves on. Well, I don't understand. Why can't you kill these fuckers? They're terrorists. They're preventing all modern fun. They're anti-fun.